Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webcast. We'll be starting shortly here. Just giving a moment for people to join. Today's webcast is Fortifying Resilience, an in-depth exploration of the overall product security assessment poster. My name is Randall Jones. I am the Offensive Operations Product Marketer here at SANS, and I will be moderating today's webcast. We're very happy to have you here today. Today's featured speaker is Doug McKee. Douglas is the Executive Director of Threat Research at SonicWall, where he and his team focus on identifying, analyzing, and mitigating critical vulnerabilities through daily product content, making him, quite frankly, one of the foremost experts in this field of product security, and also third-party supply chain attacks, which is kind of the focus of the process, but also the course that Doug has authored with us here at SANS. So we're very excited to have this webcast here today. If you have any questions for Doug during the webcast, please enter them into the Q&A window at any time. I'll be looking out for those. And please note that this webcast is being recorded and will be available for viewing later in your SANS account under My Webcasts or on the registration page for the webcast where you joined. And we'll go ahead and get going. Go ahead and take it away, Doug.
Hey, thanks, Randall. I'm excited to get a chance to talk about this new poster that we put together. It may seem like a small thing to people out there, but when you work, Ishmael and I worked really hard on putting this together. It takes time. It's awesome to see it come to light. And thanks for that intro, Randall. As Randall said, my name's Douglas McKee. If we haven't met before, love to meet you at a conference if I get a chance. I'm the lead author and instructor for Security 568, which is combating supply chain attacks using product security testing. And so product security testing is going to be the main thing that we talk about here today. If you want, I'm on social media. It's just about any platform under the handle Full Metal Packets. Feel free to reach out to me or drop in the SANS Offensive Operation Discord channel. There's a Security 568 group or room. I'm not sure what the right term is these days, but feel free to post a message in there. I'm constantly taking a look at that. So before we dive into the poster, I figured I'd give just a little bit of background on why we created the poster, a little bit of concept of what the purpose of the class is. And so I've found in our industry, it's really important to define what you're talking about. We have so many overloaded terms. What is the difference between, red teaming and purple teaming and, there's offensive security, right? All these different terms. So before we dive in too much to the poster, I figured, why don't we first take a step back and talk about what is product security testing? Like as SANS, how are we defining that? So the simplest way, the shortest definition that we put together was evaluating a product for new threats, or you can think of it as risks, introduced to an organization. So the concept is here, it's a proactive security measure. So you're looking to find what are the weaknesses or what are the doors that are open to me from using a product or using a hardware device or a mobile application, for example. Now, what does that do to my risk profile? I didn't use it yesterday. I'm using it today. There's a delta. What changed? My co-author Ishmael came up with this analogy of it's like DNA testing. And I love this analogy, right? So the idea is you can put together general industry best practices when it comes to the defensive model. And those will get you pretty far, and those are pretty good for you. But until you find out what the DNA, if you will, is of your products and how exactly what underlying technologies they're going to be using, you're not able to put in specific defenses that are catered to your organization. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with product security testing. So that's what we're talking about when it comes to product security testing. And why did we release a poster of a methodology? Well, it turns out that when we were putting together the class and putting together the content, we started doing what every good security researcher or every good cybersecurity analyst does, and we started with Google. And let me show you really quick what we found. I think this is pretty interesting. I think it's the best way to describe or understand why we're releasing this poster and why we think it's so important. So I'm going to share my screen here if I can figure out technology for a second. Let's see here. It's not showing me my windows again. Give me 1 second. Oh, here we go. Got it. All right. Sorry about that little technology faux pas. So here, if we just go into standard Google here, I'm doing this in real time, no tricks or anything. And I Google product security testing, right? Now, ironically, the first thing that pops up is SANS in our class, but you got to remember when we together, that didn't exist, right? So this is not, was not the first result when we put this together. Internet's always changing. So if we scroll down here and we look at what are the results for product security testing, if you scroll through this, the first thing you're going to notice, you get a lot of vendors, right? A lot of consulting firms, which is absolutely expected. These are people offering services to do this type of work. Here we've got product penetration testing. And if we take a look at what this company is promoting here, they're obviously some type of organization to help do this work for you. They talk about the services they offer, the benefits of that services, right? And then of course they want you to get in touch, like every security company out there, and then that's great. However, it doesn't help tell us how do we do product security testing, or is it even the same thing as penetration testing? And here it's specific on IoT. So do you only do product security testing on IoT? Like, we have all these questions, right? We keep looking through the results. We get, okay, security testing of tools and best practices. That's not even directly product security testing. We have application security testing tools. So here's a list of tools. And again, more vendors and things like that. But in the top, first page of Google, there isn't a ton here that tells us about how to do product security testing. Okay, let's get a little bit smarter of our searching, right? This is actually something we cover in Security 568 is how to be more effective with online product research or OSINT, if you will. So what if I quote this and say, hey, we want to have product security testing in my search parameters, and maybe I add the word process as well. Maybe this will help us get the process for product security testing. So we've got the SANS thing that comes up at top here. This one's new, it didn't come up before. Most effective ways to test product security. So let's see, if we click on this on LinkedIn. Okay, so we've got a very high level overview here. Define your security goals, choosing a test methodology. Let's click on this. Let's do this in real time. Depending on your product features, okay, it talks about penetration testing, but this is real short, right? This doesn't tell me how to do product security testing. It's good advice. I'm not saying it's a bad resource, but as we continue to look through here, more vendors, product security testing services, I think at this point, you kind of understand where I'm coming from. There's really nothing out there about a well-defined process for product security testing. And so that was the biggest thing that we wanted to try to solve is if product security testing is something worthwhile doing for your organization, then we need a repeatable, reliable methodology to approach this so that it can be done efficiently. And that's really one of the core things we try to talk about in Security 568 is what is that methodology, which is what we're sharing with the poster, at least the high level overview. And then what are the technical skills needed to leverage that methodology? So let's go ahead here and take a look at this poster. Ishmael and I will take credit for the content, but I have to give a shout out to SANS and Randall and his team for putting together such an awesome, like aesthetically looking poster. I promise you, if some of you watching know me personally, you know that graphics are not my thing. This was basically like pencil on a napkin style when Randall got it. So it's really awesome what they're able to put together. And what this does here is this gives you a much more granular understanding of what should we be doing as far as product security testing. And it's going to give you this step-by-step process on the first page. I'm going to walk through this here for y'all in just a moment. And then on the second page, here we go. On the second page, we've provided definition and links to key tools and key concepts, again, making sure that we're being very clear on what we're talking about. A lot of overloaded terminology in our industry to help you make sure you understand each one of these steps, what tools you might start using in these steps, and how to be as effective as possible. Of course, in the 5-day class that we offer, we dive into this at a much deeper level and give you those technical skills needed to really tackle this. But let's go ahead here for a second and take a look at the beginning. I'm going to zoom in to make this, it might get a little dicey here, loading a big file. Let's see. So we got the start button over here. And the first thing that we talk about on the product security chart is really these three steps all work together. And the concept is here, we need to understand what are the requirements for our product, and we need to build out a test environment. That makes sense, right? Like we probably did some of this before we purchased the software, or hopefully we're doing this product security testing before we've purchased anything to ensure that it's the right product or right device or right mobile app for our organization. This is kind of the precursor saying, okay, what are the requirements that I need to set up in my environment? How will I use this? And we're going to move that into what we call online product research. This is very similar to OSINT or open source intelligence. You've heard that term before. Narrowed it a little bit because open source intelligence can be very, very broad. And for the purposes of product security testing, we're really focusing on just doing online research. So using search engines like Google, using other resources like GitHub or other databases like NVD, for example, are all going to be part of that online product research. And so the goal here is to learn as much as we can without having to do anything technical or utilize a ton of time, is to first learn everything we can about the system, how to build our test environment. Now, pro tip here, we're going to want to stay away from marketing material in this step. We really want to look for technical documentation. We don't necessarily care as much about what the product could do. We care more about how it does it, and what is the procedures for it to do it. What are the open source licenses that are used, et cetera. And we'll talk about that in a moment here as well. The other thing is, while you only see online product research at this moment on the diagram, every single one of these green bubbles here, and we'll get to more of them, have a process chart of their own that we go into in Security 568. And while we call out online product research in this bubble specifically, online product research finds itself in every single one of these green bubbles. And the reason I mention that here is because we're never done with it. As we learn more, we're going to go back to this concept of continuing using the internet and frankly, other people's work to our advantage. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to do work just to do work. So if someone else has something useful out there, we want to take advantage of that. Of course, building our test environment, biggest thing that we talk about, like you do in all other types of testing, we try not to test in production, right? That can have bad side effects. So when possible, we don't want to do that, but build a potential virtual environment. We also discuss a little bit about how we deal with specific hardware cases or mobile environments within Security 568, all part of building your test environment. All right, then we start our documentation process. I know for some of you out there, that's like a curse word. We hate documentation, but it's really, really critical to the product security testing process. And I think if you get the chance to look at the rest of our curriculum, you'll find that our documentation is at least a little bit more enjoyable than some others. Why is that? We don't use Word. We don't use Notepad. Our documentation is done in Jupyter notebooks, so we can embed things like code right into our documentation. We can actually do risk analysis within the Jupyter notebook. And then we also, when we get to some more of the advanced concepts like deep packet analysis, we're going to be using Scapy for documentation. So don't think of documentation as only like writing a paragraph in Word. We're going to take documentations in many different forms, even diagrams, DFDs, and that's going to help us throughout the process and then help communicate our results as we uncover them throughout product security testing. So really, really important. We want to make sure we're starting that before we move into our basic enumeration phase. So what is basic enumeration? It's probably the largest step of our product security testing process, and it's really the foundation for the rest of the diagram. So it's really important, and it's at the highest level, it's the concept of understanding from a technical perspective how our target accomplishes its design function or normal operation. One of the gotchas here is sometimes analysts will start thinking about this very much from like a red teaming or attacker mentality, which we need to have. We absolutely need to have that throughout the process. But before we can think about it from a attacker perspective, we have to understand how it works. And that's what basic enumeration is all about. It's almost more of a developer mindset and just truly understanding what are my underlying technologies? How do they link together? How does this thing do what it's supposed to do? If we're talking about something like Dropbox, that might mean, okay, we know Dropbox is an application that syncs files to the cloud. How does it do that? What technologies does it use to do that? How does it monitor that files have been updated or not updated? These are the type of things we're looking to answer in basic enumeration. And the goal of basic enumeration is to take that understanding and have an output of a threat model. And that's what our next phase is: create a threat model. We never want to create a threat model without doing basic enumeration, but a threat model is a culmination of everything we've learned from basic enumeration. It's the idea of saying, all right, now what are the threats that this product presents now that I understand how it works? And the funny thing about basic enumeration and then creating a threat model is oftentimes it'll actually create more questions than answers. And this is how we move into our analyze results phase. And we need to ask ourselves at this point, all right, we understand how the software or hardware works. We have a bit our beginning of our threat model, but do we understand enough? Do we have enough data to actually make an educated decision about determining risk? Because that's where we're ultimately going. So right here, the epicenter of this diagram is we're always asking ourselves the question, do we have enough data? Because frankly, we don't want to go through the whole diagram if we don't have to. If we can take shortcuts, that's what we want to do. We're not promoting doing more work than we need to. Once we can determine we have enough data to understand how something works, to make a risk assessment, then that's where we want to go over here. We want to go to our determining risk bubble. But it's really important that we take the time to figure out, do we have enough data to actually determine our risk? And that's part of what you're doing in your analyze results phase, is you're saying, do I know enough information? And if the answer is no, then we're going to move into what we call our deep enumeration phase. And this is the most technical aspect of product security testing. It's not always needed, and it should never be done on a super large scope. We really want to do our deep enumeration focused on the questions that came up from creating our threat model. So those questions that we're like, we don't really know how that works, or we don't know if that threat exists. And we formulate that question, and then we dive into a deep technical analysis to answer that question in deep enumeration. We break this down into two main components in Security 568: binary code analysis, which heavily leverages reverse engineering. And then we also do deep network analysis, which is heavily leveraging packet inspection and taking apart packets byte by byte to kind of answer the questions. We find out that most questions can be answered in one of those two buckets. It's not always a one size fits all. There may be something else that you do to answer your questions, but for the most part, we find that most high risk or questions can be answered in one of those two fashions. And so that's what we put together as deep enumeration. And then of course, we're back to, okay, now we've done our deep enumeration. We have to answer the question, do we have enough data? How do we do that? We analyze our results, right? So that's, we're kind of going back to that step there. And as at this point, if you've done deep enumeration and basic enumeration and you have a detailed threat model, another thing often can come up, and that is you've done enough work that you may have already or may have a good inkling on where there might be vulnerabilities in the software that have never been discovered before. And this is completely optional. We throw it in there because sometimes it happens just by the nature of doing the work. And some organizations, especially your government organizations, they are interested in determining if they can find simple or low-hanging fruit vulnerabilities. And if the answer is yes, then we move on to our fuzzing phase, right? And this can definitely provide you an overwhelming amount of information about the risk of using the software, how difficult it would be for an attacker to use that software against you. This is the deepest part of the product security testing flowchart. And I want to stress that we in no way are suggesting that every organization needs to go through each one of these steps for every single product security testing event. Uh, Remember when I said at the beginning, our goal is to do as minimal work as possible to get to our answer. That's why enough data up here is the epicenter or core of our chart. We want to get out to this section over here. We want to answer yes as soon as possible. And so when we do answer yes, and we're kind of at the tail end of our process, we're going to move into our determining risk phase. And we wanted to really ensure for product security testing that you had something more concrete than just a whim to hang your hat on for determining risk. So we actually have a quantitative risk score that we present in Security 568, and we talk about how to use the data you got in basic and deep enumeration to calculate that risk score. We use a combination of DFDs in our threat modeling section, and we use the DREAD threat modeling, combining all the technical details into the DREAD scoring system to come up with an actual number. And this is in our determining risk stage. That's the main, that's the output of product security testing, right? What is the risk? That's why I told you the definition at the beginning is rather important, right? We're evaluating a product for new threats or risks introduced into an organization. And this is where we're doing that now that we have a data-driven analysis through the rest of the process. Of course, no process would be complete without creating a report or a brief for stakeholders in a form that is useful to your organization. That might vary from enterprise to enterprise or size of business. We provide some pointers in the class on how to do that. And then because it's possible we had that fuzzing step and did you want to look for additional vulnerabilities, it's possible you found some. You might be surprised. You don't have to go all the way to fuzzing to find some vulnerabilities. Many times vulnerabilities are discovered within basic enumeration. And we demonstrate some of that as well in Security 568. So it's really important that you disclose those appropriately to the vendor. And so we have a step here at the end to make sure you do that. We strategically put that after creating a report because the report can be a very useful tool when disclosing those vulnerabilities. And of course, we've come to the end of the process. So that is a good overview of the process and kind of a step through of the poster that we're releasing. Hopefully you see that why we put this together. I don't feel like there was another resource out there to provide that to you, and this is free to everybody. So hopefully you get a chance to use it. And then on the back side here, or the second page, I guess if it's not printed, it's the second page, right? It's not the back side. Again, we went through and defined these a little bit more. We gave you some links. Here when we talk about online product research, for example, providing you some good places to look for existing vulnerabilities. Talk about release notes is a fantastic place to find information. GitHub is another fantastic place when you're doing that online product research. Our threat modeling essentially and determining risk breaks down to two questions that we talk about in the class. What are we working on and what can go wrong? And then we use attack trees in determining risk. So we've got that outlined here for you. Basic enumeration, some tools depending on your operating system that can help you accomplish that task. Some of the ones that you might be familiar with is like the sysinternal suite. And then so we've got some mobile tools. During Security 568, we try to cover as many platforms as we have time for. So we do go through Windows, Linux, firmware, and the mobile systems. So we do cover a lot in those 5 days. So you'll see tools in here that equate to different operating systems and different platforms. We've got some extra terminologies here. We break down basic enumeration into 4 pillars, if you will, and they've got them defined for you so you can help through that. Networking analysis is part of both basic enumeration and deep enumeration. They're just done at different levels. So we've got some tools here for you as well, links to get them. And then again, terminology that we've coined. If you caught my presentation at Hackfest in LA, I think it was November, if my memory serves correctly, I actually walked through in that presentation the terminology over here of simplified scope, embedded networking. I covered some of that. I think that's posted publicly now, so go ahead and check that out if you want some more information about that. Then determining risk, I mentioned DREAD here. We've got some resources for you on that. Deep enumeration, some of the core areas of deep enumeration you can find here. it really breaks down into binary code analysis and fuzzing, which we've broken out some different tools and terminology for you as well. So I think with that, I'll leave it to you. Hopefully, again, you guys find this useful. Hit me up for questions either right now if you're on here live, but don't hesitate to reach out to me on social media at Full Metal Packets. I believe Randall popped my my information there in the chat, or you can hit me up at dmckee@sans.org. Always happy to talk to anybody related to supply chain attacks or product security testing. So Randall, I'll turn it back to you. Do we have any questions that have come in or?
Yeah, so I've been monitoring here. I actually had a question that I've been wondering myself about attack trees. And so when you are approaching setting up attack trees, I guess it's a very general question, excuse me, I'm the marketing guy, but when you are approaching that, how do you, what is do you look at, vectors? Are you really just focusing on product and a specific vulnerability? Like, is it very directed or is it more general?
So that's a great question. You can think of the attack trees as being scenario based, right? And so remember, attack trees for us is at the end, right? It's at the determine risk stage, and it's kind of an end to our threat modeling phase. So by the time you get to the point where you're creating attack trees, you've got an overwhelming wealth of knowledge of really two things, right? One is how my product works. What are the weaknesses in my product? And I guess it's a third thing, which you bring in through the entire product security testing process, which is how do I plan to use this product? Right? Because that's a really, really important. We talk about that a lot in Security 568. You're going to tailor this process to how you and your organization is going to use it. Your product security testing process or assessment may be different than someone else's. And that's why we always throw a thing of caution about if you're going to use someone else's product security testing, make sure that your use case is the same. But anyway, to get back to your attack trees, through that use case that you plan to use it, through the weaknesses you find, you're going to ask yourself the question, okay, what can go wrong with those weaknesses? How would an attacker actually use that weakness realistically? And you're going to put out a step-by-step process, and that's the attack tree. Each bubble is every step an attacker would have to take to leverage that weakness. And what that helps you do is realize where you could put in mitigating controls, or where maybe you already have mitigating controls, or where you're lacking those mitigating controls. And so it's, did that answer your question, Randall?
Yeah, yes, it does. And to back up from that, I something you mentioned there sparked a question, which was in terms of any advice in approaching your own organization about how they are using a product.
Advice on approaching how they're using your product. So typically an organization, when we talk about this in two different ways. There's I don't have a choice. I'm going to use this product because X, Y, and Z. A good example might be the medical field, right? We're going to use this device because it's a life-saving device. It's not optional, right? That's one lens. And the other lens is, oh, I need to go pick an Office business suite. I can pick Google or Microsoft. I have a choice, right? And so when we talk about the use case, when we talk about how we're going to use it in an organization, which one of those buckets you fit in is very important. Because if you fit in the bucket that I don't have a choice, we're going to use this one way or the other, then you need to understand, okay, there's a reason we have to use it. Excuse me, a little tongue tied. There's a reason we have to use this. Why is that? And what is its purpose? It goes back to basic enumeration. And as you enumerate that, that's going to help you figure out what your use cases are. As you go through basic enumeration, you're going to see, well, this product also offers, I don't know, maybe it offers a automatic, a web app, or I'm sorry, a mobile app. Maybe the medical device has a mobile app. Well, maybe you don't need to use that mobile app. So maybe you can just stop it and say, we're not going to use that feature. And that cuts out a whole bunch of risks that you may have discovered. In the use case of the office suite, so I get to pick which one do I want to use, Google or Microsoft. And of course, I'm not ignoring the fact that cost plays a factor in that, other integration play a factor in that, and you may end up in the no option category. But let's for a moment say you have a choice between the two and everything else lines up. Then you can start talking about, well, how does my team or my organization, which one of these fit that more optimally compared to what their weaknesses are that I've discovered in the product security testing process. Hopefully that answered your question a little bit.
Yeah, and I was curious more about the latter, whereas if you're working in a SOC or any security department, really broadly with an organization that has the choice. So it's not a no choice scenario where they do have a choice in a product and how they configure it, how they approach the organization, and how, like for instance, disabling mobile. A lot of organizations are going to, you would want to do that because it is more easily secure, but it might be rejected.
Right. Yeah. You might end up in that other use case, right? Where you don't have a choice. This is what we're doing. Now make it secure,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. And for everyone on the call, I dropped it in the chat, but Doug's talk at Hackfest is posted publicly. It is on the Offensive Ops YouTube channel. It is Seek Out New Protocols and Boldly Hack Undetected. So if you want to search that, that will be on the Offensive Ops YouTube. We are, of course, on it's also available in our Discord, which is just sansurl.com/Discord. Thanks, Doug, for the talk today. Very much appreciate it. The poster is very cool. Glad it turned out as cool as it did. And it's very helpful. And, we're always glad to bring this kind of content to the community. For everyone who joined us today, thank you very much for taking the time. For future SANS webcasts, you can go to sans.org/webcasts for any future and upcoming and also on-demand webcasts. This will be available. It has been recorded and will be available on your SANS portal account or on the registration page. And as Doug mentioned, he is the course author for Security 568, Combating Supply Chain Attacks with Product Security Testing. And there are some upcoming course runs at a few SANS events. So visit the course page. That's very easily accessible at sans.org/SEC568. So thank you for the time. I appreciate it. Thank you, Doug. Any parting words?
Nope. Just God bless and hope to see everybody in class.
Very nice. All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a great week. Bye for now.